On March 11, 2011, during a quiet afternoon in Japan, as the clock neared 2:46 p.m., people began to feel the ground shaking violently. This was no ordinary tremor. It was a magnitude 9.0 earthquake, one of the strongest ever recorded in history. The Pacific Ocean floor ripped apart 130 kilometers off the coast of Sendai. The Earth's roar sounded like 1,000 lions growling in unison. Though the earthquake eventually stopped, this was only the beginning. Within minutes, tsunami waves reaching up to 40 meters in some areas slammed into Japan's northeastern coast. The sea swallowed villages, homes, and thousands of lives, creating scenes reminiscent of apocalyptic movies. Over 19,500 people died in the earthquake and the ensuing chaos, now known as the Great East Japan Tsunami. But something even more terrifying than the earthquake and tsunami loomed. The disaster had reached the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. Experts and scientists clung to their hearts in fear, knowing what was about to unfold in the coming hours. What exactly happened at Fukushima? Why does this disaster still haunt the world today? And why was it dubbed the Ghosts of Fukushima? The Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, a massive facility on Japan's eastern coast, was built to withstand the harshest natural conditions. Given Japan's location on the infamous Ring of Fire, the plant was designed with 6 nuclear reactors operating efficiently to provide electricity to millions of households. On that fateful day, 3 reactors were operating normally, while the remaining 3 were shut down for maintenance. When the earthquake struck, the active reactors automatically shut down due to safety protocols and emergency systems activated. For a moment, it seemed everything was under control. But then the tsunami arrived with terrifying speed. Waves surged over the plant's 10-meter-high seawall, a barrier engineers had once deemed sufficient. In the blink of an eye, the waves swept away everything in their path. Cars, fishing boats, yachts, people and animals. The waters flooded the nuclear facility, submerging backup generators. Without power, the pumps that circulated cooling water to the reactors stopped. Inside the reactor cores, the temperature of the nuclear fuel rods began to skyrocket uncontrollably. Within hours, a deadly chain reaction unfolded. The fuel rods melted from extreme heat, hydrogen gas accumulated, and the plant exploded. Radioactive particles spewed into the air, seeped into the soil and water, transforming the disaster from a natural catastrophe into a technological nightmare. According to the World Nuclear Association, the tsunami waves that struck Fukushima exceeded 14 meters, far surpassing the 10-meter predictions by TEPCO, Tokyo Electric Power Company, the plant's operator. A 2008 internal study by TEPCO, conducted 3 years before the disaster, had warned that a 15.7-meter tsunami could hit Japan in the near future. Yet no significant upgrades were made to the plant or its seawall. Why? The answer was simple: money. Retrofitting the facility would have increased costs, and corporations' primary enemy is rising expenses. This mirrors the aviation industry, where companies sometimes neglect repairs to avoid cutting into profits, until a plane crashes, killing 300 people in an instant. An independent Japanese parliamentary investigation later described the nuclear disaster as deeply man-made, placing blame on human factors rather than nature. For comparison, just a month earlier, an earthquake in Thailand caused skyscrapers to sway dramatically, yet none collapsed. Why? Because those buildings were constructed to the highest safety standards, with engineers and financiers sparing no expense to ensure earthquake resilience. Human decisions, in other words, played the biggest role in averting disaster. On March 12th and 14th, as explosions rocked Fukushima Daiichi, columns of radioactive smoke rose into the sky. Cesium-137, iodine-131, and other deadly isotopes spread through the air, carried by the wind. Over 150,000 people were ordered to evacuate within a 20-kilometer radius. Roads jammed with panicked citizens, hospitals emptied of patients, and schools deserted. Villages turned into ghost towns, resembling scenes from the video game Resident Evil. The Japanese government faced an unenviable position. Prime Minister Naoto Kan stormed out of his office and headed straight to the plant. Furious and resolute, he confronted TEPCO's directors. As radiation levels soared, the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, rated the crisis a Level 7 event, the highest on the nuclear disaster scale, equaling Chernobyl. By mid-April 2011, the exclusion zone expanded to over 27 square kilometers. Officials warned that the area might remain uninhabitable for decades. Food and water near the plant were contaminated, spreading fear nationwide. Many Japanese lost their lifelong homes, fishermen lost their livelihoods, and the Pacific Ocean became a dumping ground for radioactive water. TEPCO admitted to leaking 300 tons of contaminated water daily into the sea in the disaster's early months. But how far did the nuclear danger spread? The Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution tracked radiation across the Pacific. By 2012, traces of cesium-134, a fingerprint of Fukushima, appeared in bluefin tuna off California's coast, 6,000 miles from Japan. Though radiation levels were low and deemed non-threatening, the message was clear. Fukushima was no longer Japan's problem alone. It had become a global crisis. While no one died directly from radiation exposure at Fukushima, unlike the immediate casualties from the tsunami, the official death toll from Fukushima Prefecture by 2021 stood at 2,313. These deaths were linked to stress, suicide, and deteriorating health post-evacuation. Elderly evacuees, displaced from their homes and placed in temporary shelters, faced a silent epidemic of despair. The World Health Organization, WHO, reported a surge in mental health issues, including PTSD, depression, and stigma. Take Futaba, a town near the plant. Once home to 7,000 people, it became a time capsule overnight. Abandoned houses, overgrown streets, and a mocking sign at its entrance reading, "Nuclear energy, our bright future." By 2023, parts of Futaba reopened, but most residents refused to return. Radiation had seeped into the soil, plants, water, and everything else. Trust in authorities had collapsed. The disaster's ripple effects reached every corner of the globe. In Germany, public terror over Fukushima spurred a rapid phase-out of nuclear power. By 2022, all German reactors were shut down, followed by Switzerland and Belgium. Italy, considering nuclear energy to address power shortages, held a referendum where 94% voted against new plants. Even France, a nuclear superpower, vowed to reduce its atomic energy reliance by a third. The message was clear. If Japan, renowned for precision and preparedness, couldn't handle nuclear power safely, who could? Post-Fukushima, global nuclear capacity projections halved. In the US, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission ordered flood defenses and backup power upgrades for 104 reactors. Ken Besseler, a scientist at Woods Hole, noted that nations began training for black swan scenarios, rare catastrophic events once deemed impossible. Decommissioning Fukushima Daiichi is projected to take 40 years and cost $200 billion, 3/4 of Algeria's GDP. Robots crawl through rubble, mapping molten fuel in reactors 1 through 3. By 2021, spent fuel was removed from reactors 3 and 4, but the real nightmare lies in units 1 to 2, where reactor cores fuse with concrete. Progress is painstaking. One misstep could release more radiation. Japan also faces a second crisis. 20 million cubic meters of radioactive soil stored in black bags with no permanent disposal plan. Burying it risks poisoning groundwater. Dumping it at sea would contaminate coastlines and marine life. Launching it into space? A fantasy. The Japanese call this the second catastrophe. Japan reformed its nuclear laws, establishing the Nuclear Regulation Authority, NRA, to enforce stricter earthquake and tsunami standards. Yet opponents argue that Fukushima 2 is inevitable. Not in Japan, but at aging nuclear plants worldwide. Before 2011, nuclear energy provided 30% of Japan's power. By 2012, it dropped to near zero, replaced by renewables and fossil fuels. By 2023, some reactors restarted amid public distrust. The NRA insists another Fukushima is impossible, but nature is unpredictable, and human error eternal. As Besseler warns, no matter how advanced technology becomes, hubris is the deadliest fuel. The ghosts of Fukushima linger, a paradox of progress a warning etched in radiation.